Hello, my name is Nelcy Rocha. I am a Dream Project scholar, and I'm here with Robert Remes, and he is an immigration attorney and a board member of the Dream Project. I'm here today to ask him a few questions about the DACA Supreme Court hearing that's going on November 12, 2019, and let's get started.
Okay.
What is DACA, when was it established, and how many people does it affect?
DACA is an acronym that stands for Deferred Action Childhood Arrivals. It was instituted, promulgated by President Obama in 2012, and he gave what we call deferred action to people who met certain criteria. And I think right now there's around 600 and some odd thousand people who have deferred action. I think it's protected at one point or another over 800,000 people, but some of those have gotten green cards other ways or in some way no longer included.
What is happening on November 12th?
On November 12th, there is going to be an oral argument in the Supreme Court of the United States before the 9 justices to decide for the Supreme Court to hear the argument of various lawyers whether or not Trump administration's efforts to end DACA can be allowed or not. So there's oral argument. People will listen to recordings later that day of the oral argument, and it'll be on the newspaper and on radios and in television. And by listening to the questions of the justices, one will get a feeling maybe for what they think, and it will be many months before they actually make a decision.
Next question is, what is the Supreme Court deciding on specifically, and what are the possible outcomes?
So soon after Donald Trump became president, he fulfilled one of his immigrant promises and terminated DACA, ordered that it would just end. It took a while, I guess, for him to get to that point. As soon as he did that, it was challenged in a number of courts, and a number of district courts all ruled that he improperly terminated DACA and that it had to continue. And it has been appealed through courts of appeals and now to the Supreme Court. Possible outcomes, I assume, are either that Trump had the authority to end DACA, in which case it will be over. Probably people with work authorization will have it for as long as their cards are valid, but they won't be able to renew it. But other than that, it will end. Or the other option is that the Supreme Court will say that the termination of DACA was illegal, improperly done, and it has to continue until the government figures out, if it can, a lawful and rational way to end DACA. And of course, at any time, the Congress of the United States could step in and pass a law that replaced it, modified it, did whatever Congress wanted.
Why did the Trump administration not attack the benefits that comes with DACA?
Well, the main deferred action, by definition, means you might be removable from the United States, but you're going to be allowed to stay here. And the regulations that have always existed long before anyone thought of DACA, long before Obama, is that anyone who is granted deferred action can apply for and get permission to work. So if you're going to let people stay with deferred action, they're entitled under the regulations that continue and have always been in place to get work authorization. So it was kind of hard to separate one from the other, I suppose. Also, although I'm not sure that logic enters into it, if you're going to let a group of people stay here, it's hard to justify letting them stay here if you also don't let them be employed, because what are they going to do with themselves? So I guess that's why.
Okay. What is the Trump administration's strongest argument for this case?
Well, the main argument that they have raised, which I guess they think is their strongest argument, is that President Obama had no authority to protect a whole group of many hundreds of thousands of people at one time. And that was inconsistent with the obligation of a president as head of the executive branch to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. That's the oath of office that a president takes. But remember, when you're thinking about the Trump administration's arguments, really no one is saying that the Trump administration can't end DACA. Just like Obama did it, another president can undo it. What people are saying is that if DACA is going to be taken away like every other government action, it has to be done sensibly, rationally, for good reason. And I don't know, in my opinion, the Trump administration doesn't have an argument, strong or otherwise, for what they have done, for the process by which they have done it.
How might the April 26th DAPA ruling affect the DACA case?
So soon after DACA was in place, Obama decided to try to be even nicer, and he tried to extend the range of people who could get DACA, and he tried to give a similar benefit to a lot more people who were parents of American citizens. That's what DAPA stands for, Deferred Action Parents of Americans, I think. And that was a much bigger universe of people, mostly anti-immigrant states, led by Republicans, with Republican attorney generals, because Republicans are universally anti-immigrant. They brought a case in front of a court, a U.S. district court, that they knew reliably was presided over by an anti-immigrant Republican judge. And that judge ruled that DAPA and this other extension of DACA was improper. That's not really part of this present case. This case is challenging DACA, but the logic that that U.S. District Court and also the Court of Appeals, to which it was appealed, went on is what I said before, that the president has no authority to blanketly give protection to hundreds of thousands of people. But that's not really the ruling, that's not the issue that we have now.
Last question is, what is the latest guidelines for Dreamers looking to renew their DACA protections?
If the Supreme Court eventually strikes down DACA, people who have work authorization will most likely continue to have it until it expires, because to take away work authorization, you have to go after each person. That's too much work. So that people want to renew their work authorization and renew their DACA at the last possible moment so that they get a maximum of 2 years. But of course you don't really know when to do it, because you don't know when the Supreme Court decision is going to happen. So I would say for sure, anyone who has a year, when they have a year left, if they have a year left of DACA work authorization, renew it now, even though it has another year, even though you may be wasting a year. Better to get that 2 years now, so if DACA is ruled out, you have the maximum time for something to happen. The only good thing that can happen, I suppose, is in November 2020 election, if a Democrat wins, and if the Democrats get control of the Senate, then we won't have to worry about this, because they will presumably be more pro-immigrant.
Thank you so much for being here
Thank you
today.
for asking such excellent questions.
Yes, thank you.
All right, I enjoyed talking to you.